In the heart of a moonless night, the train sliced through the darkness like a solitary shadow. Inside, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on the tracks provided a haunting symphony to accompany the journey of the lone passenger, a young woman named Emily. She sat by the window, watching the world outside blur into an indistinct canvas of blackness. Emily had boarded the train earlier that evening, seeking to escape the suffocating grasp of city life. She craved solitude, a chance to reflect on the tumultuous events that had led her to this moment. Little did she know, the journey ahead held far more than she had bargained for. As the hours passed and the train hurtled deeper into the night, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept into her bones. The carriage seemed to grow colder, the air heavy with an oppressive silence that pressed against her ears. She glanced around nervously, half expecting to find someone, or something, lurking in the shadows. But there was no one, only the empty seats, bathed in the sickly glow of the overhead light, stared back at her with hollow indifference. Trying to dispel her growing sense of dread, Emily reached for her phone, hoping to distract herself with music or a podcast. Yet to her dismay, there was no signal, no bars, no connection to the outside world. Just her, alone in the belly of the beast. She forced herself to take deep breaths to steady her racing heart. It was just her imagination, she reasoned. The isolation, the darkness, they were playing tricks on her mind. But then a sound echoed through the carriage, a soft, barely audible whisper that sent shivers down Emily's spine. She froze, every nerve in her body screaming in primal terror. "Oh, who's there?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper. No reply, only the relentless clatter of the train, mocking her fear with its indifferent rhythm. Mustering her courage, Emily rose from her seat and began to make her way down the carriage, her footsteps echoing like a death knell in the stillness of the night. With each step, the darkness seemed to press in closer, suffocating her with its oppressive weight. And then she saw it, a figure standing at the far end of the carriage, shrouded in shadows so thick they seemed to swallow the very light around them. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she approached, her mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling with fear. The figure said nothing, its features obscured by the darkness, but Emily could feel its gaze upon her, cold and penetrating like the eyes of a predator stalking its prey. With a sudden surge of panic, Emily turned and ran, her footsteps echoing through the empty carriage like a death knell. She didn't stop until she reached the next carriage, her lungs burning with exertion and fear. But even there she found no solace, for lurking in the shadows she saw them, more figures, their eyes gleaming like coals in the darkness, their forms twisted and contorted into grotesque shapes. Terrified beyond reason, Emily fled, racing through the labyrinthine corridors of the train as though pursued by demons from the very depths of hell. But no matter how fast she ran, how far she fled, the darkness followed, its tendrils reaching out to ensnare her in their suffocating embrace. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of terror and despair until at last, Emily stumbled upon the conductor's compartment, a sanctuary of light and safety in the midst of the darkness that threatened to consume her. Frantically, she pounded on the door, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she begged for refuge from the horrors that pursued her, and miraculously, it opened, revealing the concerned face of the conductor, peering out from within. "Oh, what's the matter, miss?" he asked, his voice tinged with alarm at the sight of Emily's wild-eyed desperation. But before she could reply, a sudden jolt rocked the train, sending Emily sprawling to the floor, and as she looked up, she saw them, the figures, emerging from the darkness like specters from the depths of her nightmares. With a cry of horror, Emily scrambled to her feet and bolted into the safety of the conductor's compartment, slamming the door shut behind her with trembling hands. But even as she sought refuge in the sanctuary of light, she knew that the darkness would always be waiting, lurking just beyond round the edge of her perception, ready to consume her soul in its eternal embrace. And as the train hurtled onward into the night, Emily could only pray that she would survive to see the dawn. But deep down, she knew that some horrors were eternal, their darkness stretching far beyond the reaches of mortal comprehension. And in that moment of chilling realization, Emily knew that she was truly alone, trapped in a nightmare from which there could be no escape.